The kitchen lights were too bright for Vian's mood. She stood at the counter, shoulders tense, jaw tight, fingers gripping the knife harder than necessary. As she chopped vegetables, the rhythmic thud, thud echoed through the space, sharp and unforgiving. Yang Jungwon noticed every single one. He had been seated at the dining table since 5 in the evening, surrounded by open files, his laptop glowing with confidential data, numbers, and names that could ruin lives. With one order from him, normally, this was his comfort zone. Tonight, it felt like a battlefield because Wine was right there, ignoring him completely. Tomorrow was supposed to be their day. He had promised, sworn on it, even joked about canceling the entire world if he had to. Yet work had dragged on, calls after calls, problems that only he could fix. And now she was punishing him the way she knew hurt the most, by pretending he didn't exist. Jungwon leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on her back. He had not looked at him once since she walked into the kitchen. Not when he entered, not when he sighed, not when he shifted his chair loudly on purpose. Nothing. His phone buzzed again on the table. He glanced at the screen. Another call. He clenched his jaw, then deliberately turned the phone off, pushing it aside. Still, she didn't react. That stung. He stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Steps slow, cautions like approaching a wild animal. Wyan, he called softly. No response. He leaned against the counter beside her, close enough to feel her warmth, to smell the faint terrace of her perfume mixed with spices. You are going to pretend I am not here? He asked. She shifted slightly to grab another carrot, knife moving faster. Jungwon sighed through his nose. Okay, he muttered. We are doing this. He reached for a bowl and started washing vegetables, sleeves rolled up, movements neat and practiced. He didn't ask for permission. She didn't stop him. That was worse. If she had snapped, yelled, or told him to get out, at least that would mean she still cared enough to react. This calm, this quiet dismissal, it made his chest feel uncomfortably tight. They worked side by side in silence, water running, knife hitting wood, oil sizzling. Jungwon kept sneaking glances at her face. Her lips were pressed together. Her brow slightly frowned. He was upset, not explosive, not dramatic, just deeply disappointed. You know, he said casually, ignoring me does not suit you. No answer. It's creepy, he added, like serial killer vibes. She snorted before she could stop herself. Just a tiny sound. Dongwon's eyes lit up. There, he said immediately. You reacted? She glared at him. Don't push it. Oh, she spoke. Progress. He smiled to himself, grabbing a cucumber. I am just saying, if you are going to murder me, at least do it after dinner. She rolled her eyes and turned away. Jungwon watched her shoulder relax just a fraction. Good. He picked up the knife beside her and started slicing the cucumber, deliberately, slow, accelerated. You are cutting it wrong, he said without looking. Oh, he replied, teach me. She sighed, finally turning to face him. You are supposed to, Angel. He stopped because that's when the knife slipped. The sharp sting was immediate. The blade fell onto the counter with a loud clack. Ah, blood bloomed across his palm. Wine froze. Then her eyes widened in pure panic. Jungwon, she dropped everything and grabbed his hand instantly, anger vanishing as if it never existed. What were you thinking? She scolded, pulling him toward the sink. Why would you be so careless? He bit back a smile. He turned on the water, gently washing the wound, fingers trembling despite her effort to stay calm. This is deep, she muttered, brows knitting together. You would you could have seriously hurt yourself. He washed her face instead of the blood. Worth it. Wyan pulled his hand closer, examining the cut carefully. Her grip was firm but gentle, like she was afraid of hurting him more. Kyungwon leaned against the counter, letting her take control. You are so irresponsible, she muttered, reaching for a towel. Do you know how dangerous knives are? He hummed. I thought you'd be impressed by my cooking skills. She shot him a glare. This is not funny. But you are holding my hand, he pointed out. She paused, then deliberately let go. Sit, she ordered, pointing toward the chair. Yes, doctor, he replied obediently. Sitting down, he rushed on the cabinet, grabbing the first aid box with far more urgency than necessary. When she returned, she knelt in front of him, placing his hand in her lap. That simple gesture made his chest warm. She cleaned the wound carefully, lips pressed into a thin line. You don't even feel pain properly, she said quietly. Always acting tough. It hurts, he lied. She looked up instantly. Where? Here, he said, tapping his chest. Because you were ignoring me. She, igno- she groaned. You are impossible. She wrapped the bandage around his hand, tying it neatly. There, she said, done. He flicked his fingers. You are good at this. She stood up. Sit and behave. As long as you talk to me. He hesitated, then sighed. You promised. That hit harder than any slap. I know, he said softly, and I am sorry. Her shoulders slumped slightly. I just wanted one day, she admitted quietly, without files, without calls, without sharing you with the world. Jungwon stood, stepping closer. You have me, he said. Even when I miss you. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned back to the stove. Dinner almost ready. Not forgiveness, but not silence either. Jungwon smiled. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken and garlic. Wine had finally calmed enough to focus on cooking, but she kept stealing glances at him. He sat at the dining table, one hand wrapped in a neat bandage, the other lazily resting on the edge, his expression somewhere between smug and innocent. You are staring, Jungwon said, eyes narrowing slightly, the kind of playful glint that made her cheeks warm. I am not, she replied immediately, chopping carrots with exaggerated speed. Sure, he teased, leaning back in his chair, totally normal behavior for a chef to stare at her husband while he waits for dinner. Wine paused mid-job. Claire aimed his way. I am making dinner. Not. She catch herself realizing that arguing with him now would be pointless. He smiled, clearly enjoying her flustered state. He lifted his bandaged hand, tapping it lightly on the table. You are going to have to feed me. That hand of mine is not very functional. You are unbelievable, she muttered, but her lips twitched. You love me. Anyway, he added, leaning forward just slightly, letting his words hang in the air. I tolerate you, she corrected quickly, hiding the smile creeping onto her face. The dinner plates were finely set, the warm glow of the kitchen lights making the table look cozy, almost serene, which made the tension of earlier seem like a distant storm. Jungwon reached for his glass of water and pretending to struggle. My hand, he said, with mock gravity. It's incapacitated. I need assistance. Wine rolled her eyes, picking up the spoon for his soup. You really think bleeding on purpose gives you special privilege? It does, he said firmly, slapping a piece of chicken on his fork and holding it toward her. You have to feed me now. Doctor's orders. I am not feeding a ground man, she said, but she leaned slightly toward him anyway, letting him take a bite. Jungwon's eyes lit up. See, you are already softening. I knew this would work. She huffed, pretending to be annoyed, but could not hide the small tugging at her lips. He leaned back, bandaged hand resting slightly on the table. So, are we talking about tomorrow? You and me, no files, no phones, no interruptions. Wine didn't answer immediately, only glanced at him over her spoon. Talk to me, he urged, voice softening. She sighed, yes, tomorrow is ours. Good, he said, smirking again. And tonight dinner and me. That's mine too. She rolled her eyes but didn't argue, serving another bite of chicken onto his plate. By the way, he added, leaning forward again, lowering his voice just enough to make her pulse quicken. That little panic attack when I accidentally cut my hand. Adorable. Jungwon, she exclaimed, flustered, smacking his arm lightly. It it was not cute. It was terrifying. Terrifying for you, maybe, he said, grinning cheekily. For me. Totally worth it. She muttered under her breath. You are impossible. And yet, you are feeding me, he pointed out, smirking wider. Ryan frowned, stapling a piece of vegetable and shoving it toward him. You are shameless. Shameless and lucky, he added, taking the bite. Your anger just make me hungrier. She rolled her eyes again, but secretly laughed, shaking her head at him. As dinner went on, the conversation turned softer, gentler. Jungwon kept lightly teasing her, brushing a stray hair from her face, making exaggerated dramatic sighs whenever she didn't look at him. And Ryan's heart softened a little more with each gesture. You know, he said, leaning forward slightly. I was thinking. Yes, she asked, suspicious. That maybe tomorrow we don't just stay home, maybe we go out. Somewhere just the two of us. Ryan's heart skipped a beat and leave all your files. All of them, he promised, mock serious, giving her a small book with one hand. in his bandage. They don't matter when you are around. She could not help but smile, shaking her head. You really think you can charm your way out of ignoring me for hours? No thinking, he corrected, knowing. Dinner ended with him casually leaning closer, his bandaged hand brushing hers on the table. You know, he whispered voice low, I might need more pampering if I keep injuring myself. You are evil, she said softly, a mixture of exasperation and amusement coloring her voice. I am yours, he said simply, even when I am terrible. She laughed, shaking her head, finally letting some of her frustration melt away. He grinned, victorious, and reached across the table to grab her hand. She didn't pull away. Jungwon's expression was a mix of smugness and innocence, a dangerous combination. You are staring again, he said, narrowing his eyes playfully. I am not, she said quickly, stabbing a carrot with exaggerated speed. Sure, he replied, leaning forward a little, letting the playful smirk curl on his lips. It's totally normal to stare at your husband while he waits for dinner, especially when he's wounded and vulnerable. Her knife paused mid-chop. Wounded, she repeated, incredulously. Yes, he said, flexing his bandaged fingers. Vulnerable, totally at your mercy. Kind of like a kitten. Why nearly dropped the knife? A kitten? You are comparing yourself to a kitten. I am injured, so it's accurate, he said, eyes glitting as he leaned a little closer. Besides, kitten get cuddles, and so do I. She ground and waved a hand at him. You are shameless. And yet, he said, leaning back with exaggerate relaxation. You are still feeding me. She rolled her eyes but picked up a spoon, serving him a bite of soup. Her hands brushed his lightly, and he let out a low hum of appreciation. Hmm, taste better when you feed me, he murmured, leaning forward just enough that she could feel his breath. Vian's cheeks flamed. Stop being ridiculous. I am serious, he said, tilting his head, watching her carefully. You have no idea how cute you look when you are flustered. I do too, she muttered, stapling another piece of chicken. Thought her hands were shaking slightly. Admit it, he teased, leaning forward again. You are trying not to smile because you think it will give me power over you. I may be, she stammered, then quickly composed herself. I'm not smiling. Jungwon grinned. Mm-hmm. Sure, he leaned even closer, lowering his voice. You know, if I had not injured myself, you'd probably still be ignoring me right now. Jungwon, she exclaimed, fluttered. It was not an accident. No, he said, smirking. And you can't deny it worked. Wyan glared, but there was a small curve to her lips she could not hide. He reached across the table, his bandaged hand brushing her slightly, and now he added, voice dropping just enough to send a shiver down her spine. I might need more pampering. Maybe I kiss her too. She froze, staring at him. A kiss? Sure, he said, nonchalantly, leaning back but keeping his eyes locked on hers. You know, for first aid purpose. Wyan ground, rolling her eyes but laughing softly. You are unbelievable. Absolutely impossible. And yet, he said softly, eyes sparkling, you are still here feeding me, talking to me, looking at me. I call that victory. She shook her head, pretending to be exasperated, but her fingers lingered on his hand just slightly, longer than necessary. Dinner ended with them both chuckling, teasing each other back and forth, and Jungwon leaned closer once more, brushing a stray hair from her face. You know, he whispered, voice low and playful. I think I am going to enjoy being your pounded kitten more than I expected. You are so going to regret that, she muttered, but her heart raced at the gentle smirk on his lips. And yet, he said softly, leaning in just slightly, I think you secretly like it. She didn't answer immediately. She just shook her head and laughed quietly, hiding a blush, letting the tension melt into warmth in that cozy, surrounded by the scent of garlic and the soft glow of lights. Jungwon knew he had won her attention back, not by force, but by being himself, playful, flirty, impossible, and entirely irresistible, irresistible to her.